Hey everybody, welcome to our program. We're here at the John and Francis Ford Film Festival. Here it is. It's going to be all weekend this weekend. If you're not going to be able to make it, because by the time you'll be seeing this, it will have already happened. But you can watch this all tonight here. We're going to be showing you all the guests, the interesting people at it, some panels. So keep watching. You're going to have a good time. Thanks a lot. Hey everybody, welcome to the John and Francis Ford Silent Film Festival. We're excited to be here. We're going to have my cameraman do a little swooping shot around just to show everybody what's going on. We're at the reception. It's exciting. People are coming in as we speak. They're getting some food, having a good time. And in the meantime, we're going to be speaking to a gentleman here by the name of Scout Tafoya. So as we get right back to us, Scout Tafoya, I have heard through a birdie that you are a filmmaker yourself. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes. Made something like 30 features that nobody has seen, so that's always, you know.
You're in good company.
Yeah, right. That's, yeah, so, but the reason I'm here specifically, I wrote a book on John Ford that was out a couple of months ago, and so got kind of roped into being a speaker here, which is extremely exciting, and I also just love watching these movies. So
for the audience that may or may not watch it, are you going to be speaking on a certain panel? Because we're going to be filming a lot of them.
Yeah, I'll be at the Sunday 2 o'clock panel. I believe I'm also introducing the movie The Taking, which is due out on Blu-ray from Decanalog Pictures in a couple of weeks. I wrote the liner notes for that, for the disc when that comes out, so I'm going to introduce that. I'm going to talk to a couple of experts, including my friend Gerald Perry on Sunday at around 2. And yeah, it's very exciting to be here. Very excited to be here with Joe McBride, who of course is the Ford expert to beat. There's nobody more well-versed in Ford lore than Joe, so it's a humbling thing to be here. It's very exciting.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit of, are your films silent films at all, or?
One or two of them, yeah. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I've made I think two, one silent film with intertitles, another that's basically just dialogue free. Do a lot of the my own music for that sort of a thing. You can find all of those on Vimeo or Vimeo on demand. Yeah.
And anything specifically you're looking forward to again?
Oh, for sure. I'm excited to see these Francis Ford shorts. A lot of Francis's work is not available, and so the idea that they've restored a lot of it is extremely enticing. They're showing Wagon Master, which is probably my favorite Ford personally, and then it's just a great round of programming, and everything's going to be good.
It's great when it's a festival. It's very tailored to one specific thing, rather than so many different subgroups. Well, thanks a lot, Scout. I appreciate it. Have a good time this weekend. We're going to keep moving along here. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody. We're back here with a couple young ladies here getting ready to watch the festival. And what is your name, ma'am?
I'm Jane McPhillips.
Jane McPhillips.
Yeah.
A great...
That's my great uncle.
Great uncle. Okay, I was going to say a great Irish name, Jane McPhillips. And your name, ma'am?
Kathy McDonald.
Kathy McDonald. Scottish. Yes. So your great uncle is John Ford.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Is there any movie here that you're most excited to be seeing? Have you seen a lot of them already?
Well, I love The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, but I can't go to Dameron-Scott on Sunday.
Right, exactly. It's a little too far for it.
Yeah.
You might be able to see it like on AMC or the Turner Classic Movies or something. Is that
I'd love to see the Francis Ford stuff because I haven't seen it, any of it.
And he might have been probably your great uncle as well, right? Because he's his brother. Now, so for the viewers at home, Francis Ford was John Ford's older brother. Is this correct? And he was
Francis Ford was the
older brother.
Older son.
And he was a actor, from what I know, a little bit more so. Yeah.
And he directed.
And he directed too.
Yeah.
So they kind of transitioned from silent film into more of the westerns that had more sound. So the other gentleman, Scout, was saying he was excited to see the short film program. Yeah. That's not tonight?
There is one short film tonight.
It's one of his very first films tonight is called When the Tables Turn. It's a Western comedy from 1911.
And what was your name?
Oh, hi, I'm Kathy Fuller Seeley. I happen to be the one doing the Francis Ford research, and I'm delighted to be here and delighted to meet the family. And it is such a wonderful journey that I'm glad I'm not even done yet. You know, I feel like I'm halfway through, but every day brings new, exciting new discoveries. So I was at the Portland Public Library this afternoon and looking in old city directories. And Francis got his start. He was multi-talented. He went into the Spanish-American War, and they hired him as a field musician to play the bugle, to send troops into battle. He didn't get to go into battle. They never made it out of Camp Chickamauga in Georgia. They all came down with dysentery, and by then the war was over. But he learned so much about a love of military precision and pomp and things like that, that I think he told his little brother, John, about.
Maybe it was you that I heard this from. That scene where John Ford does the ending in a doorway. That's Francis Ford did that.
There's a marvelous film we're going to see on Sunday in Damariscotta, and I apologize that I don't say. See, I've got to learn the main lingo. The wonderful things, all these films are going to be on a DVD of restored Francis Ford films. It's very exciting that he's getting his due, finally 120 years.
And you were one of the judges, I think, for the silent film that
They were, such talent. All the entries were fabulous. They were very different takes on what silent film can do. I'm so delighted we're going to see the winner on the big screen, but all of the entries were.
And the winner that we had at Portland Media Center is a film called Moss, and it's very much in the spirit of John Ford with two actors. It's really interesting title cards. Should be a great time, and we'll be introducing that tonight before the feature film. And are you guys excited to see the feature film?
Yeah, I am. Yes. Yep.
I'm not sure what the John Ford film is. I just heard.
This is the one film tonight, I believe, is Wagon Master, which with Harry Carey Jr. also and Joanne Drew and a cameo by Francis Ford. So Francis Ford appeared in 30 of John Ford's films, and you can always pick him out. He's the drunk bartender. He's the odd little guy. Yes, he's the fellow who almost dies, and when he hears the fights going on, he wakes up. They're all wonderful, and he is able to bring that silent film sensibility to all these later films. It's great fun to watch his rivalry. Their whole lives.
Okay.
Rivalry? They had a rivalry?
You know.
No, just as you say, Francis was 12 years older, and he had left Portland by the time John was only 6. So John knew his brothers Eddie and Pat much better than Francis. Their mother thinks that he's become something like a bank robber. He's terrified of, and another sister says, he's gone off to join the circus. But in 1913, this is when John is working at an usher at the Jefferson Theater, and they like to go to the nickel movies. They see somebody on the screen. This is one of the sisters. I think this is Josie, the sister. Sees a fellow on the movie screen and says, that's Francis, that's Frank. And she makes the whole family come and see the movie, and that's it. And within 3 or 4 months, they get in touch with him, and he comes home in style, in a big car, wearing a tuxedo, going, I'm making money, I'm a movie star. And
this was before the days of cell phones or email. So you go to Hollywood, they think maybe you're a bank robber, but you come back, the Hollywood story. It's very interesting. Well, we look forward to seeing those films. Thank you very much again, and thanks for being the judge. Thank you for taking your time. Yes, shaking everybody's hand. Yeah, thanks again. I appreciate it. Thank you again, ma'am. Take care. Thanks. Hey, everybody. We're back here. I'm here with Dan Ford. I noticed Dan Ford.
Dan Ford, that's me. I didn't do it, though.
You didn't do it. Not at the Ford Theater. So I assume that you're maybe some relation of John Ford.
Grandson.
Grandson. And you will be speaking on Saturday? Or?
God, I hope not.
Okay.
If you're unlucky, yes, I guess I will be.
Okay. Are there any films you're excited to see tonight or over the weekend?
Tonight they're showing Wagon Master, and I haven't seen it in a long time, and it's one of my favorites. And actually, I know it was one of my grandfather's favorites. I mean, it wasn't his favorite film, it wasn't his best film, but it was one of the ones he enjoyed making the most.
Okay. And was John Ford, he was very much known for Westerns.
Right.
And he was also a lot of silent films, but then also transitioned to?
Well, I mean, Westerns, they'll always be making Westerns, I mean, Yellowstone, they keep making them, and it's part of the American mythology, and he started out making silent movies, and he always loved making Westerns. He liked being on location. He liked being with his own unit. He liked being away from the studio bosses. He loved people sneaking in the stage there, telling him what to do. So he liked the independence of making a Western on a difficult location.
And I mean, nowadays, even like a movie like Star Wars back in the day was a modernized Western. They took influences, Blade Runner, some samurai movies a lot of times. A lot of them were influenced by him. Good, the Bad, the Ugly, the spaghetti Westerns.
Yeah, definitely. Star Wars, you make a good point.
Yeah. That
Star
was
Wars
like Western set in space. And did he do, what was his career spanned all the way till the 50s, 60s?
Well, he worked up until about 1965, 66. So, yeah, he worked well into his 70s. So.
Okay. And do you live here in Maine, or are you coming in just for that?
I live in L.A.
In L.A., okay. Went from rain to rain here, exactly.
It was wet today.
Wet today. Well, thank you very much, Dan. I appreciate your time. Thanks again. Take care. Thanks. And are you coming in from somewhere else, or do you live in Maine?
Well, I'm coming in from California.
Okay.
Yeah, from Los.
Did you hitch the same ride with Dan Ford?
No, we came in on another airline.
Okay. So, what types of movies are you looking forward to seeing here this weekend? Is there?
Well, all of them, particularly the motion pictures made by my grandfather. I haven't seen them, so except on either DVD or YouTube. Yeah. But I'm happy to be here and to represent the Ford family and to see some of his work.
And he was an actor, and he's a little bit older than John Ford.
Yes, he was an older brother. I believe he was the middle brother, and Jack was the youngest. So he brought him in early on in his career, and they, in the motion picture industry at that time, they did everything themselves. Moved sets, tailored clothes, wrote script, did the whole thing, even stunts. Even the stunts.
And it was all, in those days, all silent. I was just watching a thing about the invention of the clapper. And in those days, they had the chalkboard, but they didn't need the clapper because they weren't taking any sound yet.
Yes.
And so they all did he write any of these himself, or was he?
Oh, yes. He wrote the scripts and the storyline. And they kind of, a director that couldn't write or produce or needed help cutting the film, they kind of looked down on him as being kind of a sissy. You had to do it all, yes.
And so, and your family's lived in L.A. ever since the whole?
Yes, yes. Yeah, I was born and raised in Los Angeles. My father was born in Hollywood, and he had a little film experience too. Before he was one, actually, he was the infant in some of the films, and growing up, he was a character actor. I think there was The Gates of Doom. He was one of the child actors, and so.
Yeah. And so you're saying you're excited to see some films from your dad. Anything else? I think there's a documentary maybe on Sunday, or are you on any panels? Or
No, I'm just here to take it all in. Because, he died just before my first birthday, 3 days before my first birthday. So I really don't have any direct experience, but except through family stories and family legend.
Right, exactly. Well, it's a great family, and I think you have a great time this weekend. Thank you so much,
you very
Michael.
much.
I appreciate it. Thanks again.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the State Theater and the opening of the John and Francis Ford Film Festival. We're going to get started in just a moment here, so please take your seats if you've just arrived. The first thing that we'd like to do is give the biggest thanks to the State Theater for supporting us in this venture to start paying more tribute to John and Francis Ford and to eventually build a permanent exhibition at the Maine Irish Heritage Center devoted to the brothers from Portland, Maine. The other firm that we'd like to give our deepest thanks to is Freddie Flaherty, who has not only been supportive, but they've also been very engaged in the festival, helping us with ideas and just generally be incredibly helpful. And tonight I would like to introduce you to John Doyle with Freddie Flaherty to say a few words.
Thank you, Jane. Berman and I are honored to have this opportunity, and we really have been most impressed with work that Gene has done with Professor Connolly, who will follow me, Vinnie O'Malley, Matthew Jude Barker, and I see Bob Carney in the crowd. So this is a tremendous culmination of really 20 years of resurrection and restoration of the Maine Irish Heritage Center. And it's great to be part of it. It was really a natural thing for our firm to want to sponsor this. We like to think of ourselves as the firm of immigrants and ethnics, and came together in different ways. Frank Preddy, one of the founders, had Italian roots, and he sponsored the Portland High School Preddy Watch that goes back to the early 1900s. His son Bob is a robust 99 and still going strong. Our firm merged into the Berman, and Wernick firm, which Wernick's and Sidney Wernick, professor at Harvard. Sidney became the first Jewish member of the Maine Supreme Judicial Court. And then moving on, John Flaherty and his mother grew up his mother was born in Spittle, and they came over here, and John Flaherty went to first class at Cheverus, graduating at age 16, went on to BC Law and Holy Cross. I guess moving up to 1978, my senior partner, Severin Bellow, is out in the audience, and Severin likes to tell us he's really a McCarthy, but his father was the first Franco Supreme Court Justice appointed. So there's a little theme there that we like to think that, like the Ford family and the Feeneys, we have prospered and grown in Portland and have our roots in Portland. But I have a personal connection and interest in this in terms of my wife Diane is in the audience, and she is, her people go back to Ballyconneely, Diane Donnelly Malia, and we've gone back to Con, we've been to Ashby Castle, we've seen the site of Cohan's Pub and the Quiet Meeting. But I think, speaking of my mother's side, her father, Peter J. Hollywood, ran the Hollywood Cafe on Free Street for 30, 40 years. He was just talking to Matthew Jude Barker. He and his brother were bootleggers, and they were inevitably competitors of the Ford family. But I want to allude too to my great-grandfather, Peter Sylvester Doyle, who lived on Chestnut Street and Chapel Street, very close to Sheridan Street. He was a captain in the Portland Fire Department. At his funeral, the fire captain, Charles Feeney, was one of his pallbearers. And reading from his obituary, it says that he was a member of Troop D of the 4th U.S. Cavalry, and he fought the Indians in Arizona, Texas, and the Mexican border. He was also in the Navy. So I want to speculate that like a young John Ford watched Winslow Homer paint, I like to think that young John may have spent time with my great-grandfather hearing tales of Custer and the American West. So we're all here to learn what is legend and what is fact, and I'm really thrilled to hear from Joe McBride and the other scholars who will help us on this journey. Turning it over to Professor Connolly.
Tafalcherov, good evening, everybody. Glad to see you all here. This is a culmination of a lot of work, and it's my honor to pay tribute to some of the people who have helped to put this on. First and foremost, people from the Maine Irish Heritage Center, Hannah Field, Karen Haney, Pat McBride, Vinnie O'Malley, and then there's somebody who was left off this list, and I'd like to pay special attention to that person today. Gene, come up here. Get out here. Yeah. You all know who this person is? How about a hand for Gene Haney? You stay right there. Okay. Apropos of Jean, she made up this list and she left her name off it. But without Jean and her efforts, we wouldn't all be here today. This collection that we have today would be only a small fraction of what it is now. And so the Maine Irish Heritage Center in all of Portland is so happy to have her moved up here now and ensconced in our life. And we're just so very happy. So again, thank you, Jean, for everything. So corporate sponsors, Pretty Flaherty, you've heard from John Doyle. State Theater, where you're at today. Remember, this is just a simple movie theater growing up. The Portland Museum of Art, where we'll be for the next 2 days. The Lincoln Theater in Damariscotta. Portland Media Center, and the WMPG radio station at the local university. A hand for all those people. And finally, all of you who are here tonight, and especially the All Access Pass holders and the friends of the John and Francis Ford Film Festival. So the next order is something that we put together in order to pay tribute to 3 people who helped remind the city of Portland about who John Ford was and what his responsibility, or what our responsibility is to honoring him. So we have a tribute to Joris Ubans, who is not with us tonight. Also Howie Vandersee from Bowdoin College, who also is not with us tonight. Both of these men passed away in the last year. And Jack Dawson, the former mayor of Portland, who is with us tonight. So a short little film tribute to these 3 most important people. Thank you very much. Tonight marks the start of the John and Francis Ford Film Festival in their hometown, Portland, Maine, as we pay tribute to 3 locals, enthusiastic custodians of the films and achievements of our 2 Hollywood legends. Their work to recognize and honor the Ford-Feeney family is the cornerstone of this festival. Joris Ubans, born in Riga, Latvia, emigrated to the United States with his family in 1950 to flee the repression of the Soviet Union that followed Nazi occupation during World War II. After completing his education, he became an art teacher at Gorham State Teachers College, now the University of Southern Maine. Film study was an essential part of his teaching, and he was a huge fan of the works of John Ford, amassing an extensive film collection. Joris produced the first major local film festival in honor of John Ford during November and December of 1970 at multiple venues across the state of Maine. A longtime football coach at Bowdoin College, Howie Vandesey was also a lifelong admirer of the works of John Ford and spoke about Ford to any audience that would listen. Collaborating with his good friend Jack Dawson, Howie organized the July 1998 citywide tribute to the filmmaker in Portland. During this week-long tribute, the John Ford statue was unveiled and dedicated at Gorham's Corner in Portland with an audience of Ford fans, Feeney family members, Hollywood actors, and representatives of the U.S. Navy, the Navajo Nation, and the Government of Ireland. Surrounding the statue are 6 granite pillars, each engraved with essential facts about Ford's 6 Oscar-winning films. Howie wrote these descriptions. Like Ford's films, Howie's pillars will stand the test of time. In addition to serving the city of Portland as a city councilor and mayor, Jack Dawson was a sports enthusiast who taught and coached following his education at Shevers High School and Boston College. Perhaps Jack naturally came by his love of Ford films, as his Uncle Phil was one of Ford's best friends, and his Aunt Bessie was a classmate at Portland High School. It was lucky for Portland that Jack occupied the mayor's seat when the city was approached by Lyndon O. Lane, who was appalled that Ford's hometown had no official recognition of this Hollywood legend. In 1998, together with Howie Vandesey, Jack paid tribute to the most significant film director of the past century by unveiling the Ford statue. Jack was ahead of his time when he said film is the 20th century vehicle of art. Tonight we are grateful to these 3 men for pioneering efforts on behalf of the Ford Feeney family. Tonight we pay tribute to them for their energy and foresight as we open the John and Francis Ford Film Festival, built upon the inspiring foundation they laid for us.
Greetings, my name is Kevin Sturr, and I'm a professor at Boston University. I had the pleasure of working with Michael Conley on a book called John Ford in Focus, and I've been part of the Maine Irish Heritage Center's project to commemorate Ford in his hometown of Portland. So thanks for being here tonight. I'll try to make this brief. As Professor McBride said, just before his chapter on Ford's boyhood in Portland, he quoted Ford as saying, "I love Portland. I don't even know if they like me." And I should say Portland was long overdue in recognizing Ford, America's greatest filmmaker for sure, and perhaps the world's greatest filmmaker. But even though Portland was slow to recognize Ford, we slowly caught up. Usually towns don't commemorate filmmakers like they do poets and generals and political leaders. And I think you'll know that Portland's done a lot from dedicating a statue to Ford as well as to holding film festivals in his honor. Just very quickly, you noticed a little bit of this from the video. In 1971, there was a month-long statewide film festival in honor of John Ford, which John Ford did know about and sent a thank you note to Joris Ubens for organizing. Films held all over the state. In July of 1998, the city did a week-long tribute to Ford along with the dedication of the statue at Gorham's Corner. Many thanks to the work of former Mayor Jack Dawson, who's with us. They also held films at the auditorium in Portland High School, where John Ford went to school, and that's now called John Ford Auditorium. Representatives of the Irish government and the Navajo Nation and the U.S. Navy, along with Hollywood actors, were present in Portland at that time, back in 1998. In 2005, we did another film festival organized by the Maine Irish Heritage Center. We're lucky to have some notable personalities here, including Dan Ford, John Ford's grandson. In 2013, we did a John Ford Day. The city recognized August 31st, the date it was the 40th anniversary of his death. That date is John Ford Day in Portland. And just in a few years ago, in February of 2019, the entire state celebrated Ford. We had a statewide celebration on Ford's birthday. It was called 125 Years of John Ford. And this was organized by the Maine Film Center. Films by Ford were shown at the Maine Historical Society, Bates College, Waterville Opera House, and most of the older theaters around the state, the Strand in Rockland, the Criterion in Bar Harbor, the Evening Star in Brunswick, and so forth. We're hoping this coming February, which will be John Ford's 130th birthday, to screen The Iron Horse in Portland, perhaps at the Portland Museum of Art. It'll be the centenary of the release of Ford's first great epic film, The Iron Horse. This month, just kind of keeping track of dates, August 31st of this month is the 50th anniversary of John Ford's death. August 14th, which just passed, was the 142nd birthday of Francis Ford, John Ford's brother, a pioneering filmmaker you'll be hearing more about. And on September 5th, it'll be the 70th anniversary of Francis Ford's death. I should also mention that 2023, this year, is the centenary of Ford's silent film Cameo Kirby, which was his first film as John Ford rather than Jack Ford. It also was the screen debut of Jean Arthur. I know Jean Arthur is Joseph McBride's favorite actress and one of mine, and she was a Westbrook girl who lived part of her life in Westbrook, Maine. It's my honor to introduce to you, or say a few words about our distinguished scholars here tonight. Joseph McBride has published so many different books and film studies that are so valuable it's impossible to list them all. But he is Distinguished Professor of Film Studies at the School of Cinema at San Francisco State University. He's published seminal works on John Ford, including the great epic biography, Searching for John Ford, critical studies of Billy Wilder, and recently Ernst Lubitsch. He worked with Orson Welles on his last film that was finally finished recently and put on Netflix called The Other Side of the Wind. Joseph McBride was an actor in that film. And along with all of his many works on film and biographies of directors, Joseph McBride has also helped in the production of films, and his newest book coming out in December is a revision and an updating and an expanded version of one of the first great books on John Ford. It's called John Ford, that he co-wrote with the late Michael Wilmington, and that'll be released in December by University of Kentucky Press. I also would like to say just a few words about Kathy Fuller Seeley, who's here this weekend. She's the William P. Hobby Centennial Professor of Communication at the University of Texas Austin's Moody College of Communication. Kathy Seeley is an expert on Francis Ford and is working on a new project dealing with John Ford's older brother who brought him to Hollywood. She's also recently published books on Jack Benny, and as well as works dealing with the role of movie theaters in small town communities. Both Professor McBride and Professor Seeley are truly distinguished film scholars, and we're lucky to have them here in Portland for this special event. And now I'd like to turn things over to John Ford's grandson, Dan Ford, who wrote one of the very first biographies of his grandfather called Pappy, The Life of John Ford, which is a valuable work, and also produced a film documentary called The American West of John Ford. Dan Ford was with us in 2005 for that film festival and brought along 2 of John Ford's Oscars with him, which were great to see there at the film festival. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dan Ford.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be back in Portland, even though it's freezing, but that's my fault. I didn't bring in warm clothes. These guys are writers. They don't know to get in the light I'm hopefully in the light, and hopefully you can see me, or maybe it's better you don't. Anyway, I'd like to thank the Irish group and the Irish Heritage Association for putting on this event. And I won't name all the names, but you know who you are. And thank you, thank you, thank you. And it's a pleasure to be back in Portland. And I would like to acknowledge my primas, the McPhillips family, and thank them and all their support of this event. And with that, let me introduce you to a real writer, Joe McBride. Joe, come on up.
Thank you, Dan. Good to see people here for another John Ford tribute. It's wonderful. I came in '98 for the statue tribute, and I met Mayor Dawson there, and it's great to see him again tonight. I just want to say a few words about what we're showing tonight and why we're showing it. Francis Ford was John Ford's older brother, as Dan says, and I just want to read you what John Ford said about Francis in Peter Bogdanovich's interview book, John Ford, which is kind of a miracle that he got John Ford to say as much as he did for this book. So I recommend reading it. But Peter said, "Who were your early influences?" "Well, my brother Frank. He was a great cameraman. There's nothing they're doing today, all these things that are supposed to be so new, that he hadn't done. He was really a good artist, a wonderful musician, a hell of a good actor, a good director, Johnny of all trades, and master of all. He just couldn't concentrate on one thing too long, but he was the only influence I ever had working in pictures." So that's quite a tribute. Francis's work is, unfortunately, he made many, many films. He was so prolific. And a lot of it was lost because the film history is, a kind of scandalous, in a scandalous state. 90% of our silent films have been lost due to neglect by the studios or fires or one thing or another. And I just did a long study of John Ford's silent period. He made 72 films, and we now have 27 of those in whole or in part, which is not a great survival record, but it's enough we can start understanding what he was doing in that period. He started out making low-budget westerns with Harry Carey, and he did nothing but those for a while. He directed a few other short westerns, and then he moved to Fox from Universal, and he started making a very eclectic array of films in the 20s, learning his craft, trying different genres, establishing himself as an important director. And then in the 30s, he really hit his stride and made films that make him more famous today. But a lot of his work, we just don't know what it was, because a lot of it is gone. So it's kind of an archaeological job to try to piece it together out of reviews and other accounts. But films keep popping up. One of his films was found in New Zealand a few years ago. But Francis is a great character, and some of his films survive. I have a few of them. Some of them are terrific, but a lot of them exist in very rough shape. And Kathy Fuller Seeley, I'm really thrilled that she is doing a major rescue job trying to discover more and more Francis Ford and Grace Grenard films. Grace was his partner in Hollywood, and they worked together. She was an actress, writer, and director. They had 30 women directing films in Hollywood in the silent period before they stopped letting women direct, basically. And so they were a team, and they would star in their films, and they made serials and all kinds of other films. And Kathy has been restoring them, putting musical scores on them, etc. We're going to get to see several of them, one of them tonight, which is a Western comedy called When the Tables Turned. And so you'll get some sense of Francis's work. This is with an actress named Edith Story, who we worked with before Grace. But then we're going to show, they asked me which Ford film we should start with, and I said, why not Wagon Master? That's such a wonderful, wonderful film. It's my current favorite Ford film, along with They Were Expendable, his great World War II film. And I interviewed Catherine Clifton, who was Ford's research assistant, really fascinating woman. And she said to me, you know, Ford used to tell people Wagon Master was his favorite film. And she said, I couldn't believe he said that. Wagon Master, that was nothing. He made The Grapes of Wrath, for God's sake. He made How Green Was My Valley. And I don't know if he was kidding or not, but no, he wasn't kidding. He meant it. Wagon Master is a masterpiece. And it's not very well known, and it was kind of ignored when it came out. Westerns were ignored by the critics. And among the reasons, well, I thought it would be appropriate to show this, it's very much like his silent Westerns. It's a very low-budget, modest film, and I think those are great virtues in filmmaking when today everything is, you know, some overdone, gargantuan project. It's nice to see a film with 8 covered wagons, and a few horses, and a small cast. And Ward Bond has a wonderful role, but the stars of the film are Ben Johnson and Harry Carey Jr., who are wonderful Ford actors who are in a lot of his films. And Harry Carey Jr. as the son of the actor who starred in the early Ford films. So Ford was very nostalgic, and he wanted to make a film that was like his early Harry Carey Westerns, which were sort of elemental Westerns stripped to the bone. But this film is much more complex than it may appear at first glance. But Lindsay Anderson, the first important Ford critic, called this an avant-garde Western. He said Ford leaves the plot behind for long stretches just to show music, have music play, and have dances and horse riding. Ben Johnson was the greatest horse rider in the history of films. And Ford has this amazing sequence where he's just riding a horse in jump cuts. And you didn't see jump cuts in a 1950 Western, for example. That's a rather avant-garde technique. And Dobie Carey, Harry Carey Jr., he told me when Ford said, I want you to make this Western, Wagon Master. And he said, oh, great. And he said, who's going to be in it? And he said, well, Ben's going to be in it. And Dobie said, well, and what about Duke? Is Duke going to be in it? And he said, God damn it, can't you guys ever make a movie without John Wayne? He said, I want you boys to be in the film. And he tried to make Ben Johnson a star, and he had everything that it took to be a star. He was very good looking. He was very natural in his dialogue. George Stevens, who had him in Shane, told me, he said he was the real thing. He was a real cowboy, and great rider, and a very impressive fellow. The one thing he lacked, I think, was a sense of danger, which Ingmar Bergman says is necessary to be a star. And Ben Johnson got the sense of danger later. He had a falling out with Ford, and he went off and went on the rodeo circuit, and he became the world champion in rodeo. And he later won the Academy Award for The Last Picture Show, and he said he was prouder of being the world champion in rodeo than getting an Oscar, and I think he's right. But by that time, he came back. He was an older, wiser, sort of bitter-looking guy, and he was just great in films like The Wild Bunch, Sugarland Express, etc. Wonderful actor. But one reason I like this film, that critics at the time criticized it. I read some reviews. They said, well, there's not a lot of action, there's not a lot of shooting and killing in the film, and we're disappointed by that. Well, I think that's one of the good things about this film, from our point of view today. And another reviewer said, and the Indians are nice, they're friendly when they show up, and we're disappointed there's not a lot of fighting with the Indians. Well, that's why we like this film today. You know, in 1950, they thought it was disappointing that people weren't slaughtering each other and Indians weren't the villains, but Ford treats the Indians as friends, which they were, his good friends, the Navajos. He made this film in Moab, Utah, which is sort of the low-budget version of Monument Valley. If It's more expensive to shoot in Monument Valley, but Moab looks kind of like it, and it's a beautiful location. And it's a story of Mormon pioneers, and Ford got to know the Mormons because they were extras in his films, the cavalry films and My Darling Clementine, and he said he would sit around and talk to them about their family histories and their migration west. And they were an outcast group, and Ford, growing up in Portland, felt like an outsider being an Irish-American kid in a WASP-dominated city, and so he always identified with outsiders who were being persecuted, like the Mormons and the Indians, and show people, or the other group, Western show troupe, and they were ostracized too. So it's all his favorite kind of people putting together and having a wonderful time, just a very relaxed film. Delby Carey told me that of all the films they made together, this film, Ford was the happiest when he was making this film. He just had a purely good time, but it's kind of neglected, so I thought it'd be a wonderful way to start this series to kind of show you a rare Ford treat. So let's watch the film. See you tomorrow. Thank you. Sorry, Kathy is going to tell us about the Francis Ford film. Sorry, Kathy.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Well, thank you all for being here tonight. First, before we get to that, so I'm introducing it, we're going to show it, and then I'm going to come back. Okay, fantastic. I'm here to, as a part of this fabulous festival of Portland Media Center, folks held a silent film making contest, and they had 5 fantastic entries. It was very difficult to choose a winner, but here are members of the Portland Media Center to talk about that and to present the winning film.
Hello, everybody. I'm a member of the Portland Media Center, Luigi Scarcelli, an independent producer there. I have Warren Edgar with me. He works with Lion E Productions. They're the sponsors for tonight, for the film. So he's going to speak a few words.
Yeah, well, good evening, everyone, and thank you, Luigi. Thank you to Maine Irish Heritage Center. It's such an honor to be here. My name is Warren Edgar. I'm the Director of Video Operations for Liani Media, and we're the sponsor for the festival portion of tonight with all the films that came in. And, you know, when we heard that Luigi was organizing this, we said this is something we want to throw a weight behind, because Luigi, for those of you who know him, he's a guy who gets stuff done. And he's also a man of the community. And that was really key here at Liani Media. So when we saw, hey, Luigi Scarcelli is doing this, the Maine Irish Heritage Center, including Gene Haney, is working on this, we said this is something we want to get behind. So we are so honored to be presenting the 2023 winner for the John and Francis Ford Film Festival. Now I'm going to hand it back over to my friend Luigi.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. I just want to say a couple of words here. We at PMC are so proud to be sponsoring the first annual silent film competition associated with the festival. We've had a lot of creative people at the Portland Media Center. We work really hard being creative. We're really excited to be associated with such a great festival this weekend. We would like to thank the judges for the festival. Reginald Groff, who's a local filmmaker. He couldn't be here tonight, but he will be watching later. As well as Catherine Fuller-Seeley. You just saw her before. She did a great job. They were great judges for us. We had some tremendous entries. They will be all on Channel 5, where we feature all of them, as well as a lot of the panels. So watch for that on our YouTube channel, as well as Channel 5 on cable. But without further ado, there's only one winner, and that winner could be the film entitled Moss. So we're happy to screen that now for you. Thank you very much. Have a great night. Take care.